Hello, good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad, Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This. Now, today we're going to continue our three-part series on the government's economic and social plan known as Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 ahead of the tabling of Budget 2020 tomorrow. Now, joining us on the show, we have Nizam Mahshar, who is the CEO of the newly established think tank Institut Masa Depan Malaysia, or better known as MASA. They formulated the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 policy in collaboration with the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So welcome to the show, Nizam.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. My first thought when this document came out, Nizam, was essentially, I thought, well, first of all, who is MASA? Because, you are newly established, and I understand you are a strategic partner to the political party Bersatu. Now, the next question was, why wasn't this coming out of the Ministry of Economic Affairs? Why was MASA tapped to create this document?
I think basically MASA is a group of researcher, policy people, that we have been engaging with the government, and then we have been corresponding on issues, doing analysis, and I think we have engaged with the Prime Ministers and also the Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as the President of Bersatu, and we raised all these issues and the concerns about the economic direction, the development policies of the country, and from there, I think the ideas of looking at the problem statements, some of the issues, we formulated this idea about shared prosperity, and we raised these ideas to the Prime Ministers. And from there on, I think the idea has put up into shape, and we have been asked to engage with many other parties, the component parties of Pakatan Harapan, the civil societies, the industry players, and also to analyze more of data, etc., that have come up with the kind of trajectory and what should be done with the country.
Can I just stop you there? I want to ask you if you can help us understand what MASA represents in terms philosophically, especially around economic policy planning, the role of the state, the role of the free market, and such. Because we have groups like Ideas with free market, pro-free market, and small government, so on. So, where does MASA fit in the spectrum, ideologically speaking?
Basically, we consider ourselves the Malaysian version of growth. So I think what has been aspired in the guiding principles of shared prosperity itself, because these guiding principles of shared prosperity basically is views, the economic views, the political economy, the vision, the philosophy of various leaderships, and the concerns of Malaysians. So we are trying to find a kind of a win-win kind of formula that can be adapted to many leaderships of the country. So from there, I think we have, it's not about moving into socialism or neoliberalism, etc. I think something that can suit and provide solutions to the country. For instance, of course, there are discourse about the role of GLCs, for instance. So different political ideology would say different solutions towards it. Some says that GLC shouldn't be there, and you should divest, etc. But there are some unique roles that we have seen in many countries, in South Korea, in Singapore, etc. And this has also been the Malaysian experience in building the economy of the country.
Right. I want to come back to something you said. So you said that in the creation of these guiding principles, you had presented a problem statement to the Pakatan Harapan government. In the diagnosis of the problem, talk us through the issues that SPV 2030 was meant to address. What was the diagnosis of the problems from the perspective of MASA and also from the Pakatan Harapan government?
I'll give you an example. One of the key issues prior to the election, and up until now, people still discussing about the issues, is cost of living. And I think people says that, looking from the economy at the time and then the slow progress of the economy, people are looking the pricing. People cannot manage between their salaries and also the increasing price, and that has become an election issue even. But afterwards, when people look from the pricing of goods issue alone, it don't actually solve the problem, and that issues continue to be there. But the actual problem from our analysis is actually the issues of income, the issues of the income of the people. We found out from the data, for instance, from the last, especially in the last 10 years, the last decade, 60% of the job creations are low-income jobs, which provide salary of 2,000 ringgit and below. And the question is why? Because, and of course, with the income of 2,000 ringgit and below, you cannot survive in this kind of economy. You know, the rising pricing of goods. So, why does that happen? It's because the job offering, the type of job that has been created, is low-skill jobs. And why has this happened? Because the economy itself is only providing low-skill businesses, low-skill jobs.
So how do we attract the high-skilled jobs and therefore higher incomes? But I want to ask you this. Let's look at your 15 guiding principles. You note its needs-based approach. That's said in one of 15, right?
Yes.
But the story that's come out very strongly is that this analysis essentially is about Bumiputra, non-Bumiputra, and around the question of equity. So why is it that the old narrative of Bumiputra versus non-Bumiputra, equity, has come to the forefront of the discussion of SPV?
I think that is because that's the mind. That is basically what is in the mind of the Malaysian. You know, that discourse had been there before, and that has that is still central to the discourse within Malaysia. But
is that a helpful discourse? Is that something that Pakatan itself wants to put as center of its narrative?
There was an expectation when the manifesto came out, you know, during GE 14, that it was going to be different. It was going to be a needs-based narrative going forward.
Which is there in your guiding principle.
Yeah, that's agreed. Need-based is one of the principles under the Barisan Nasional bersama. But you see, the racial issues, the ethnic issues, is only one component of the issues. We have the issues of the structure of the economy, you know, the distribution of towards the income of the people, the type of the corruption issues. We have the disparity among income class. We have the disparity of the regions, and one of the components is the disparity or the gaps among the ethnics. So from the situational analysis, we have tabled all these problems as the key problems that we need to address.
So are you saying that only a small part of this, a small portion of these guiding principles looks at the disparity between the races, the kind of race-based?
Only one of the problem statement address the issues of ethnicity. But we need to acknowledge the problem. The problem is still there. The growing disparity economically, from the income perspective, from the wealth perspective, from the jobs perspective, that the gap of disparity is still there, and it's not only between the Chinese and the Bumiputra. It's also between the Chinese and the Indians, and other races. You know, in Sabah and Sarawak.
Also inter-race as well. Okay, so that's one part of the guiding principles. Now we're going to come back and talk about the other guiding principles of the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. That's coming up next on Consider This. So stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, with me Sharaad, Kuttan, and on the show Nizam Mahshar from the newly established think tank Masa, or Institut Masa Depan Malaysia. Sharaad, you had a question for Nizam.
Yeah, so we talked about the guiding principles, and you know, there are just quite a number of them, and we don't have enough time to go through them. But I want to talk about what you call enablers. You listed 8 enablers, and one of them is education and vocational education, TVET, as we like to call it. I want to ask you about that problem, because it seems to me education is always seen as a mechanism for social engineering in Malaysia, and so for decades. But it seems to have resulted in poor quality education generally. We seem to be lagging behind Vietnam and so on and so forth. Is there new thinking, or are we going to repeat the same mistakes? It's still going to be quotas, we're going to sideline meritocracy, we're going to do everything in the same way and hoping for a different result.
We have not gone to the level of details in terms of the mechanisms of each of the components of shared prosperity, but the idea behind it, especially when we talk about TVET and also education, is there seems to be a gap. While the country, when we talk about shared prosperity, is about growth, and not only about growth, it's about escalated growth. It's a departure from a low model economy that we have right now, that has produced low-skilled workers, low-skilled income, to a kind of a high-value economy that must adapt to the technology, must adapt to best practices, must adapt to the new ecosystem. But if you cannot manage this divide, the divide from what is the level of our education right now, what is the use of our the level of knowledge in terms of the technology, the skill among our workers. So we cannot adapt to the new economy.
Okay, so the new economy is a global economy in which Malaysia has to locate itself. And I think some of the criticism has been is that this document doesn't talk enough about the external environment which Malaysia has these aspirations. We have lots of aspirations and we are very good at planning based on aspirational talk, but the delivery has always been the problem. And some of the questions, the hard questions I want to put to you is, are we willing to take the hard decisions to create quality education? Putting meritocracy first, rewarding success, so on and so forth. Do you think we can do that?
In terms of the thinking, I totally agree with you, meaning the deliveries is the key challenge. But in shared prosperity, and what has been mentioned by the Prime Minister in his launching speech, that the aspiration is to turn the government into an outcome-based government. Meaning we look at what, it's not about just having outputs,
An outcome-based government, meaning?
Well, as opposed to opportunity.
Outcome-based government meaning we need to set our goals right. We are talking about how many numbers of our professionals in which area, in which sectors, what kind of skills that is needed in our industries.
But can government determine that? I mean, I think that's that is the nub, right? We are a capitalist economy. Yeah. We actually operate by the free market, but then we expect government to somehow change the results.
The driver of this economy is the private sector, but the government need to provide the vision. Where they themselves need to put that direction. For instance, in terms of their development planning, are you still thinking about the sunset industries, or are you moving into create infrastructure, the connectivity that actually can adapt to whatever changes that they have? So if we still have that kind of gap, then forever we will not move to the country forward. So the country provide the vision, but the driver is the private sector.
Does the private sector take the government seriously? I mean, is it actually being directed? I mean, do they say we're going to go where government thinks we should go, or they're going to go where profits go?
And also, were they consulted in the drafting of this document? You talked about consulting the other coalition parties, but were the other stakeholders consulted?
In that process, we have consulted. We have engaged with numbers of private sector, from the SMEs to the chambers of commerce to the industry player, professionals. But of course, the process is not concluded. There'll be more processes towards the 12 Malaysia plan.
Oh, it's an ongoing consultation.
It's an ongoing process. That's why this is just what has been tabled, what has been launched is a framework in terms of the strategy, in terms of the action plan, initiative programs that will come out, that will be in the 12 Malaysia plan.
And one of the things that I thought was particularly interesting was that when you look at what kind of growth story the growth plan was for the shared prosperity vision, you had that kind of breakdown in terms of states and the kind of focus areas of what you're going to be focusing on for each of the states. Now, how much of that was really centralized and how much of that was consultative by nature to the states? For instance, with Sabah and Sarawak, in determining that these would be the key growth areas.
For the time being, what has been the data that we have gathered is more of qualitative issues, and looking at what are the involvement of the industries in each of the states. But it only provides some suggestion in terms of what of the existing focus areas. If you see from what are the key economic growth activities that we have that has been proposed in the shared prosperity and the existing mapping of the activities of the states, there is still a gap.
Is it the same or is it different?
There is still a gap.
There's a gap.
Moving from whatever there is in the states towards the new activities, there'll be more work to be done.
I wonder about the new political realities. This is a very fragmented country. The federation has never been more fragmented. The question of whether the federal government's vision can be translated to the states. We have the west coast under Pakatan, the east coast of the peninsula under PAS and UMNO. We have the territory of Sarawak and Sabah also going in their own direction with different political leadership. Is this federally led plan going to work in a very fragmented political context?
I think everyone wants to see growth. We have seen statements by state leaders. I've seen from the opposition state like Pahang, meaning welcoming the shared prosperity, because we are talking about growth and opportunities and how that the federal government can assist the development, or also the development of infrastructure, connectivity, of the opportunities from the states. I give you an example. We have all the industrial park in the countries, but because these parks are developed in silos, most of them are not really fully utilized. And there comes a time when people start having the trend that will come. For instance, there was a trend talking about halal hub. Then you see all the halal hub opening up in each states. Now there's a new trend of having an aerospace hub. So can you imagine 14 aerospace hub in the countries? That is just when we do plans in silo, then we cannot harvest or harness the best potential economic opportunities there. But if you can identify what are the strengths of each of the states, and meaning try to build up the ecosystem, the financing, the capital,
and not compete with each other.
Not compete with each other. I think that will basically harness the full potential.
Okay, so optimizing that ability. Yeah. Okay, we're going to come back and continue this conversation about the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. Stay tuned to consider this. Thank you for staying with us on Consider This. Melisa and Sharaad here with you tonight. And on the show, we were talking to Nizam Mahshar from the think tank Masa, or Institut Masa Depan Malaysia. They helped draft up the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 document. So we're talking about that. And I think now that this document is out there and it's been launched, it's about a week now, isn't it? And we've had some time to digest it. Budget 2020 is going to be tabled tomorrow. I want you to kind of give us a sense of how this will be different, how Budget 2020 will be different from the previous budgets now that it's being informed by this, by SPV 2030.
This is just my view, meaning what I see, what are the priority areas is to change the context of how we drive the economy, and because we are looking into changing the ecosystem of businesses towards a higher value economy. So capacity and capabilities development is very central. So I think there should be a lot of focus on the SMEs development, the development and transformation of our workers, the skills development, TVET, etc. That should be important, especially to the youth. And I think to provide more, to relook into the state development, looking again in the context of capacity and capability development. Are the industries ready, and what are the focus of the development for those industries, and what are the necessary importance for each of the industries to move forward into the aligning themselves to the shared prosperity.
Okay.
Right, so this is the document for the next 10 years.
Yes.
Budgets for the next year,
Next
right? But your institute is Masa Depan. Masa Depan is the future. And I'm thinking, when we listen to futurists, we're talking about 50 years ahead, right? And the question is, are we thinking in those terms? So what do you think are going to be the major challenges, especially in the external environment, not the Malaysian national or domestic context, that will really determine if we can deliver on the aspirations that are embedded in this document?
The external element is missing from this document. Do you agree?
We are looking at, because the central part of the earlier discussion of the whole document is talking about, are we missing the opportunity? Because everyone is saying, globally people are looking at Asia, at ASEAN, as the new gravity of economy of the world. And China is there, and then India is there. And you see the booming of Indonesia itself, our partners. But we are seemingly lacking. We are no more the knowledge-based country. We are no more the technology-based country. We are right now. We are seemingly behind Vietnam and Indonesia. So that is very much central. But the process itself must look inwards in terms of building ourselves, the preparedness of the nation, the society, the workers.
Okay. So fixing ourselves first, is it?
Yes, and that is what they have been trying to do in the last 1 year in terms of solving our debt issues, etc. But moving from all the debt issues, the institutional developments, etc., we need to focus on the people, the society, and the ecosystem itself. So I think that should be the biggest challenge of shared prosperity. And of course, the deliveries of the government in achieving that, in making sure that those changes can happen.
What is the most negative scenario you think? What could derail these plans?
People losing hope, people losing hope to the country. The government is not delivering the aspiration of the other people. And we are torn apart in terms of politics. We are not focusing on the real important things of growth, the income of the people, and then so because of that we might not achieve.
Well, you did say at the start of the program that this was meant to be a 10-year program meant to transcend all kind of political changes within the country, right?
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
And the hope is that this also reflects the wants and the needs of the people.
Yes.
So when you talked about people losing hope, does that mean that you think this will not resonate with the people?
I believe this will answer some of the people's need, because we are not just talking about the country getting better GDP. This is straight away talking about the income of the people.
Individual income levels.
And if we can actually increase the incomes of the people. So the gaps, the trust within people, what we mentioned in the definition itself, talking about the prasangka from one or another. Meaning, if you have that kind of decent living, you have some kind of comfort, then you will focus on the more important things. And we are not disputing about, as we see in a lot of this race and religion issues there. So let us focus into more productive things to build up the nations.
All right, Nizam, unfortunately, it's all the time we have. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight, explaining the thinking that went behind this document. I'm Melisa Idris with Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for Consider This. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.